In 1969, Milt Macklin, a journalist for an adventure magazine, traveled to New Guinea with his film crew to create a documentary about a person who had disappeared in the area. Milt hoped to find the missing person during their expedition and capture the event on camera, which he believed would make his documentary a major success. Despite their extensive search and plenty of footage, they never located the missing individual. 4 decades later, a new documentary team watched Milt's forgotten footage while researching the same missing person case. What they found on the tapes was totally unbelievable. Today, I'm going to share the story about what they found and, more importantly, reveal what it told us about the missing person. I must warn you, the details are highly disturbing. On the morning of Saturday, November 18, 1961, 23-year-old Michael Rockefeller was in a precarious situation. Stranded in a 40-foot catamaran, a makeshift vessel comprising 2 handcrafted canoes tied together, he repeatedly tugged at the pull cord of the outboard motor, but it failed to start. The engine sputtered without catching, leaving Michael and his small crew drifting helplessly out to sea. But their troubles were far from over. The catamaran was starting to sink. About me, Michael, he was in this remote and dangerous part of New Guinea for a specific reason. He was drawn to the region by his fascination with the Asmat tribe, known for their unique cultural artifacts, particularly the bis poles. These poles, intricately carved by the tribe's master craftsmen, depict figures stacked atop one another, resembling men standing on each other's shoulders. Michael was captivated by these artistic creations. However, the significance of the bis poles extended beyond their visual appeal. To the Asmats, these were not mere artistic expressions, but sacred objects embodying the souls of warriors slain in battle. The tribe believed that these souls remained trapped within the poles until their deaths were avenged. Hence, the poles were never discarded or sold. They were an integral part of the Asmat culture, representing both their artistic prowess and their deep spiritual beliefs. Months earlier, Michael had visited the Asmat tribe and negotiated to trade his goods for a bis pole. Despite fulfilling his part of the deal, the tribe had not sent the pole. Determined, Michael was now returning to claim the bis pole he was promised. As Michael Rockefeller sat in his sinking catamaran, drifting further into the Arafura Sea, his immediate concern was survival. Alongside him were René, a French anthropologist, and 2 teenage Asmat guides, Simon and Leo. Despite their efforts, the motor remained dead. Facing the reality of their sinking boat, Simon and Leo suggested swimming the half-mile to shore. René, a weak swimmer, and Michael, reluctant to abandon his bartering supplies, decided to stay behind. Simon and Leo then dived into the ocean to seek help, leaving Michael and René alone on the drifting vessel. Michael, whose life was a stark contrast to his current predicament, belonged to one of America's wealthiest families, the Rockefellers. His grandfather, John D. Rockefeller, was an oil magnate, and his father, Nelson Rockefeller, was the governor of New York, soon to be vice president. Despite his affluent background, Michael was drawn to the rugged life in New Guinea, far from the influence of his powerful family. He had even hidden a previous injury from getting shot in the shoulder with an arrow from them, fearing their potential retaliation against the tribe. Michael's passion for the Asmat culture and their art had deepened during his time in New Guinea. He had stayed behind after a filming expedition to collect art for a new museum his father had opened in New York, the Museum of Primitive Art. While Westerners often viewed the Asmat as primitive, Michael saw a depth and richness in their culture that he wanted the world to appreciate. Hours after Simon and Leo's departure, Michael and René, with no sign of help, began bailing water from their sinking catamaran. It was futile. A rogue wave soon capsized the boat. By the next morning, they were still adrift. Realizing the severity of their situation, Michael decided to attempt the swim himself. Despite René's protests, he strapped on a gas canister for buoyancy and set out into the open sea. Hours later, as René held on to the capsized boat, a plane spotted him. The rescue team informed him that it was Simon and Leo who had alerted them to their location. There was no word from Michael. The disappearance of a Rockefeller triggered a massive search effort involving considerable resources. Despite extensive efforts, Michael was never found, and by 1964, his family accepted his presumed death. Meanwhile, rumors circulated in New Guinea of his survival, fueling speculative stories and publications. Years later, in 1969, an adventure magazine reporter, Milt Macklin, followed up on a tip that Michael had been spotted. Despite extensive searches and a thorough review of all filmed footage, no trace of Michael was ever confirmed. Disheartened, Milt returned home, his footage forgotten, the mystery of Michael Rockefeller lingering unresolved. 40 years after Michael Rockefeller disappeared, another film crew was intrigued by ongoing rumors suggesting he was still alive in the jungles of New Guinea. They began their investigation by reviewing unwatched footage filmed by Milt Macklin decades earlier. What they found was astonishing. Among hours of old footage, there was a fleeting glimpse of a canoe on the water, filled with Asmat tribe warriors, a group known for their fierce presence. This was a war party, likely heading into a conflict with a rival tribe. But amidst these imposing warriors, one figure stood out starkly: a naked, bearded white man who bore a striking resemblance to Michael Rockefeller. Despite the grainy quality of the film, the image sparked a global frenzy of speculation. Could this really be Michael Rockefeller, heir to a vast fortune, who had forsaken his affluent life to live among the Asmat? The possibility was thrilling, though it remained just that, a possibility. He could also have been a missionary or another outsider who found their way to New Guinea. Nevertheless, the story of the billionaire's son, who might have chosen a completely different path, captivated people around the world. In 2012, over 50 years after Michael Rockefeller vanished, and 4 years after Milt Macklin's forgotten footage resurfaced, Carl Hoffman, a journalist with National Geographic who was deeply intrigued by the mystery surrounding Michael's disappearance, decided to delve into the case. Carl, along with his interpreter, traveled to New Guinea to live with the Asmat tribe, the same tribe Michael had been fascinated with. After spending months integrating into their community, earning their trust and respect, the Asmat revealed to Carl a story about Michael's fate that had never been told before. The tribe shared this sensitive information with Carl under a stern warning. Revealing the truth could endanger the entire village and possibly Carl himself. Despite the risk, Carl was compelled to share what he had learned. After leaving New Guinea, he wrote Savage Harvest, a book that laid out the chilling details of what really happened to Michael Rockefeller. And from his book, here is what happened to Michael Rockefeller. On the morning of November 19, 1961, a day after Michael Rockefeller's desperate attempt to swim 5 to 10 miles to shore for help, 3 Asmat elders named Finn, Ajim, and Pep were among 50 tribe members resting at a river's mouth that emptied into the Arafura Sea. This was near where Michael and his cruise boat had capsized amid tumultuous waters. The group sat in 8 long canoes, some smoking cigars, others chewing on sago palm flower, adorned only with bands around their knees and elbows and elaborate piercings. The day was tranquil until the elder Ajim spotted a peculiar white object moving through the sea towards the river. Alerting the others, he described it as possibly a white crocodile or serpent. Intrigued and cautious, the tribe prepared to confront whatever approached. As the white form drew closer, they paddled forward, spears ready. However, upon closer inspection, they realized it was not a creature, but a man, a white man floating on his back using makeshift flotation devices. The tension dissolved into laughter as they lowered their spears, recognizing the man posed no threat. This man was Michael Rockefeller. Overwhelmed with relief, Michael rolled over and reached out to grab a canoe. Recognizing him, Elder Pep exchanged glances with Finn and Ajim before helping Michael aboard. Exhausted yet relieved, Michael lay in the canoe as the tribe turned back upriver, chanting in unison, a sound new to his ears despite his familiarity with Asmat culture. Enthralled, he tried to inquire about the chant's meaning, but was met with silence as the tribe focused solely on their rhythmic incantations. Michael lay there, listening and being carried to safety, wrapped in the mystery of the chant and the unexpected rescue. Suddenly, the chanting ceased, and the canoes steered toward a small inlet leading to a clearing on the shore. As they slowed, Michael struggled to his feet to look for signs of the village, but there was only the empty shoreline. Concerned, he murmured, I hope we're heading to the village soon. I need to contact someone to rescue Renee and find Simon and Leo as well." He tried to communicate with the men in his canoe, but the vast language barrier left both sides puzzled and unable to understand each other. At that moment, one of the Asmat tribesmen began to laugh at Michael's efforts. His laughter caught on, and soon the majority of the tribe joined in, leaving Michael bewildered and disconnected from the joke. As abruptly as it had started, the laughter stopped, and the tribe returned to their solemn, rhythmic chanting. Methodically, they began disembarking from the canoes, stepping onto the shore with a renewed focus that seemed to exclude Michael from their intent. The shift from mirth back to ritualistic solemnity underscored the profound cultural divide and uncertainty of the situation Michael found himself in. As the canoes reached the shore, a sense of foreboding grew within Michael. Instinctively, he lay back down in the canoe, distancing himself from the unfolding scenario. However, his actions seemed only to invite attention. The tribesmen who had earlier laughed at him now stood over Michael, chanting in a low, steady tone, his expression unnervingly calm. Suddenly, the man raised his spear and drove it into Michael's side. As the spear pierced him, other tribe members raised their horns, creating a jarring cacophony of sounds that echoed Michael's screams of agony. Weak and in pain, Michael attempted to shield himself by rolling to the other side of the canoe, but the tribesman struck again, thrusting the spear into his other side. The sheer force of the attack overwhelmed him, and adrenaline surged through his veins, compelling him to clamber out of the canoe and onto the muddy bank. But his escape was futile. He collapsed in the mud, unable to find his footing. Two tribesmen quickly approached, lifting him by the arms and dragging him through the clearing towards the dense jungle beyond. All the while, the rhythmic chanting and intermittent blasts of the horns continued, a haunting soundtrack to his plight. They reached another clearing, secluded and remote, where Michael was forced onto his knees, surrounded by a circle of tribesmen who continued their relentless chant. And then at some point, one of the tribesmen walked up to Michael, grabbed his head, and pushed it forward, exposing the back of his neck. And then another tribe member walked in. And again, the whole time this chanting is going on, horns are being blown, and this other tribesman comes up, and he raises an axe, and he brings it down on the back of Michael's neck. The brutal ritual, marked by ancient traditions and enigmatic chants, left Michael at the mercy of the tribe, concluding his tragic encounter in the remote wilderness of New Guinea. The Asmat tribe had not forgotten Michael Rockefeller from his visit months earlier, where he had tried to acquire one of their sacred bis poles. Viewing his actions as a profound disrespect, they harbored deep resentment towards him, offended by his assumption that their cultural relics could be treated as mere collectibles. This grudge festered, and when Michael inadvertently drifted into their territory, the elders saw it as a providential opportunity for retribution. The three village elders, Finn, Ajim, and Pep, silently agreed upon seeing him in their canoe that they would enact a ritualistic execution, not just as an act of revenge, but to honor the spirits of warriors lost to past conflicts with white men, believed to reside within the bis poles. The chant heard by Michael as he was led to his fate was the sacred invocation they recited during such executions. The tribe's retribution was gruesome and thorough. After executing Michael with an axe, they decapitated him, dismembered his body, and conducted a cannibalistic ritual, consuming his flesh. The brain, regarded as the most sacred part, was reserved for the elders. What remained was preserved for later consumption. Michael's skull was treated as a trophy, adorned and kept by the elder Finn. When a large search party later scoured the area, the tribe remained silent, aware that any disclosure could provoke severe repercussions from the Western world. This secret was kept for decades until Carl Hoffman of National Geographic uncovered and documented these events in his book, Savage Harvest. Despite its publication, the tale's authenticity has been questioned, shrouded in the persistent mystery surrounding Michael's fate. To this day, the official stance by the Rockefeller family and most authorities is that Michael drowned during his attempt to swim to safety. The true extent of what transpired remains a topic of debate and speculation. As we wrap up the story of Michael Rockefeller, we're reminded of the profound impact of cultural misunderstandings and the mysteries that still linger. His disappearance remains a stark example of the risks and ethical challenges in anthropological exploration. Thank you for tuning in. If you have thoughts or theories about Michael's fate, please share them in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more captivating stories. Until next time, keep exploring the unknown.